I used to believe that fear was something you learn, something shaped by stories, movies, and imagination. People in America love to say, if you can't see it, it can't hurt you. Europeans joke about ghosts as old folklore, tales meant to entertain, not warn. I believed that too, until the night I accepted a ring from a man whose face I can no longer remember clearly. It happened in a quiet rural area of the United States, one of those places where diners close early, street lights hum softly, and locals lock their doors before sunset without ever explaining why. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The ring was cold, heavier than it should have been. Silver, worn, engraved with strange symbols that looked older than language itself. The man didn't smile, didn't threaten me, didn't even ask my name. He just said something that still echoes in my head. You shouldn't walk alone anymore. I laughed it off. But that night, I noticed something strange. My shadow stretched longer than it should. It bent at angles that didn't match the streetlights, and when I stopped walking, it didn't stop immediately. At home, I told myself it was stress, jet lag, my imagination feeding on silence. But then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, circling my house. I checked the windows, nothing. Checked the door, locked. When I finally gathered the courage to look outside, I saw her for the first time. An elderly woman standing across the street, wearing a long, torn dress that moved even though the wind was still. Her back slightly bent, her head tilted as if listening. She didn't wave, she didn't speak. She just stood there. In many European cultures, they say never acknowledge wandering spirits. In parts of rural America, locals believe looking too long invites attachment. I didn't know that then. I looked straight at her, and she smiled. That was the moment I understood something was following me. Not just a shadow, but something waiting for permission. Since that night, I've learned why certain towns avoid eye contact, why old rumors are whispered instead of written down, and why some objects are never meant to be kept. Because once you accept them, they don't leave. And if you're listening to this right now, stay with me until the end, because what followed me might not have stopped. Subscribe to this channel for more true-style horror stories inspired by Western folklore, real locations, and chilling rumors, so you never miss what waits in the dark. Now, let me tell you how the ring chose me.
Black Hollow, Massachusetts isn't the kind of town you find on a map unless you're already looking for it. It sits between long stretches of forest and aging highways, a place most people only pass through on their way somewhere else. During the day, it looks harmless. White wooden houses with front porches, rusted mailboxes, and churches older than most families who attend them. The air smells like pine and damp soil, the kind that clings to your clothes. But nights in Black Hollow are different. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not peaceful silence, observing silence. No music drifting from houses, no laughter. Even the insects seemed hesitant. Locals here have a habit of finishing their errands before sunset. By the time the streetlights flicker on, the town feels like it's holding its breath. At a small roadside diner, I learned the first unspoken rule. People don't make eye contact after dark. When I walked in, conversations died instantly. Forks paused mid-air. A few heads turned, then quickly looked away. Not in fear, more like caution, as if acknowledging a stranger at night might draw attention from something else. The waitress, a woman in her early 50s with tired eyes and a forced smile, poured my coffee without asking. Her hands trembled slightly. "You're not from here," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. I told her I was just passing through. She nodded, glancing toward the windows. "Then don't stay long," she whispered, "and don't walk alone." In many parts of rural America, superstition blends seamlessly with routine. People lock doors not just for safety, but for tradition. In Black Hollow, those traditions run deeper. Locals believe night is not just a time, but a condition. Outside the diner, I noticed symbols carved into fence posts and tree trunks, simple markings, circles broken by lines, old protection signs passed down through generations, similar to warding symbols found in European folklore. When I asked a local a man about them, he stiffened. "Those aren't for people," he said. "They're reminders." Reminders of what, he wouldn't say. As I walked back to my car, I felt it, that sensation of being watched. Not from behind a window, not from the street, but from the darkness between the buildings, the spaces where light didn't reach. I caught my reflection in a storefront window. My shadow lingered a second longer than it should have. I told myself it was exhaustion, but as I drove out of town, I saw someone standing near the closed gas station at the edge of Black Hollow. An old man, waiting. And for reasons I still can't explain, I slowed down. That was my first mistake. The gas station at the edge of Black Hollow had been closed for years. Everyone in town knew that. The pumps were rusted, the sign flickered even though there was no power, and weeds had claimed the asphalt like fingers pulling the ground apart. That's why seeing a man standing there felt wrong. He was positioned beneath the dead fluorescent lights, as if he knew exactly where the darkness ended and the shadow began. His coat hung loosely on his frame, far too heavy for the warm night air. I couldn't see his eyes clearly, only the outline of his face, sharp and hollow, like it had been worn thin by time. I told myself I was just being polite when I rolled the window down. "Everything okay?" I asked. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a slow step closer. The air around him felt colder, thick with the scent of metal and old rain. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded dry, like paper scraping across wood. "You didn't look away," he said. I frowned. "What?" "Most people here do," he continued. "That's how they stay unnoticed." He reached into his coat and pulled something out. A ring. Even in the dim light, it caught my attention instantly. Silver, heavy, engraved with symbols that didn't resemble any alphabet I recognized. They weren't decorative. They felt deliberate, carved for function, not beauty. "Take it," the man said, holding it between his fingers. I hesitated. My instinct screamed to leave, but curiosity has a quiet voice and it's dangerously convincing. "Why?" I asked. The man tilted his head slightly, as if he listening to something behind me. "Because you're already being followed," he said calmly. "This will help them find you." A chill ran through my spine. I laughed, forcing the sound out. "That's not funny." He didn't laugh back. In American roadside folklore, there's a belief that certain places don't just trap travelers, they mark them. Gas stations, crossroads, and abandoned highways are said to be thin places where things cross over unnoticed. The man stepped closer again, and I noticed something disturbing. His shadow didn't match his movements. When he raised his hand, the shadow lagged behind, stretching unnaturally across the ground toward my car. People used to wear these so they wouldn't be lost. Not everyone wanted to stay dead. I should have driven away. Instead, I took the ring. The moment it touched my skin, my finger went numb. The metal was ice cold, far colder than the night air. A sharp pressure wrapped around my finger, like something tightening from the inside. The man released it and stepped back immediately. "Don't take it off at night. They'll think you're hiding." "Who are they?" I asked. But the man was already turning away. As I pulled back onto the road, my headlights briefly illuminated the gas station again. The man was gone. Only his shadow remained, stretched long across the pavement, pointing straight at me. And in my rearview mirror, for just a second, I saw an elderly woman standing at the edge of the trees, watching. I didn't drive far that night. There's a certain kind of fear that doesn't make you run. It makes you slow down, second guess every sound, every reflection. I stopped at a small roadside motel just outside town, the kind with buzzing neon lights and doors that opened directly to the parking lot. The clerk didn't ask many questions. He glanced at my hand once, then quickly looked away. That should have been my warning. Inside the room, everything felt normal at first. The TV hummed with late-night reruns. The air conditioner rattled like it was struggling to breathe. I sat on the bed and stared at the ring. It looked older now. Not damaged, aged, as if time had caught up to it the moment I put it on. I tried to pull it off. It didn't move. I twisted harder, panic creeping into my chest. The skin around my finger felt tight, slightly numb, like circulation was being slowly cut off. When I stopped trying, the pressure eased, almost as if the ring had responded. That's when the lights flickered, just once, then again. In American ghost stories, electrical disturbances are often the first sign. In European folklore, it's said spirits drain warmth and light to announce their presence. I told myself it was faulty wiring. I lay down anyway. Sleep didn't come easily. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside the room. Slow, deliberate, moving along the wall. I sat up, heart pounding, eyes locked on the shadow beneath the bathroom door. It stretched outward, thin and warped, like it was being pulled from somewhere unseen. The bathroom door creaked open. Nothing stood there, but the shadow remained, spreading across the floor, climbing the wall, reaching the ceiling like a living stain. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The air felt heavy, pressing down on my chest. Then I smelled it. Old fabric, dust, and something faintly rotten. In my panic, I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, I was lying in bed. Morning light filtered through the curtains. The TV was off. The room was silent. I laughed shakily, convincing myself it had been a dream, until I looked at the mirror. There was a handprint on the glass, not mine. Thin fingers, long, crooked, pressed from the inside outward. And behind my reflection, just for a moment, I saw her, the old woman, standing in the corner of the room. Her dress dragged across the floor without sound. Her eyes were sunken, dark pits fixed on the ring. When she smiled, her mouth stretched wider than it should. She raised a finger to her lips, and then she was gone. But the room felt occupied. In European superstition, they say when a spirit enters your living space, it doesn't leave right away. It tests the boundaries first. That day, wherever I went, my shadow arrived a second before I did, and every reflective surface showed someone standing just a little too close behind me. That night, I stopped believing I was alone. Something had crossed the threshold, and it wasn't planning to leave. By the fourth night, Black Hollow no longer felt like a town. It felt like a boundary. During the day, people moved quickly, avoiding small talk, avoiding questions. At night, the streets emptied completely. Curtains were drawn tight, porch lights stayed off. Even cars seemed to speed through without slowing down. Locals here believe that night belongs to those who remember it. I learned that the hard way. I was driving back from the diner just after sunset when I saw her again. She stood at the edge of the road, just beyond the reach of my headlights. An elderly woman, thin and hunched, wearing a long, faded dress that brushed against the asphalt. The fabric looked old, too old, like it belonged to a different century. She wasn't hitchhiking. She wasn't waving. She was waiting. I slowed down without meaning to. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as my headlights washed over her face. Her skin was pale and stretched tight across her bones. Her eyes were dark, reflecting no light at all. And when she smiled, it wasn't welcoming, it was expectant. In European folklore, there's a warning about roadside women, spirits who appear at crossings or lonely stretches of road, waiting for acknowledgement. In parts of New England, those stories evolved into something worse, the Gray Widow. They say she follows those who carry what doesn't belong to them. As I drove past her, I felt it, the sudden pressure in my chest, like the air had been sucked out of the car. The radio crackled to life on its own, spitting out fragments of an old hymn, the same tune she'd been humming in my dreams. In the rearview mirror, she hadn't moved, but her reflection was closer. That night, I finally asked someone. The diner was quieter than usual. Only a few locals sat at the counter, nursing coffee they weren't drinking. When I mentioned the woman, the waitress froze, her face drained of color. "You saw her?" she whispered. One of the men crossed himself. Another stood up and left without paying. The waitress leaned closer. "People who see her don't stay long," she said. "They either leave or they're followed." She told me the rumor locals refused to write down. Decades ago, widows were buried outside consecrated ground, their grief believed to tether them between worlds. Some were buried with rings, markers meant to guide their spirits so they wouldn't wander. But when the rings were taken, the spirits lost their way, and they started looking for replacements. That night, I locked my door, checked the windows twice. I even covered the mirrors. Still, I heard her. Bare feet dragging softly across the pavement outside, slow steps circling the building, and then her voice, right outside my door. "You're wearing it wrong," she whispered. The handle rattled gently, politely. In American ghost lore, spirits don't force entry, they wait to be invited. I didn't open the door. But when I looked down at my hand, the ring had turned slightly on my finger, as if something unseen had adjusted it. That was when I understood the truth. She wasn't following me anymore. She had arrived, and she wasn't leaving without what she came for.
By the 5th day, I stopped pretending this was just fear. Fear doesn't leave marks. I woke up with my hand clenched tightly against my chest, my finger throbbing. The skin around the ring had darkened slightly, bruised as if I'd worn it for years instead of days. It felt warmer now. Not comforting warm, but the kind of heat that comes from something alive. When I pressed my thumb against it, I felt something pulse. Once. Twice. I pulled my hand back, heart racing. Rings aren't supposed to do that. All morning, the pressure followed me. Not pain exactly, more like a reminder, like a grip that tightened whenever my thoughts drifted too far from it. Each time I tried to distract myself, the ring seemed to grow heavier. In old European superstition, cursed objects don't harm immediately. They settle in first. They learn your rhythm, your weaknesses. By afternoon, the whispers started. Not voices, at least not clearly, more like fragments carried on breath. Every time I passed a reflective surface, I caught movement just behind my shoulder. My shadow no longer waited for light. It clung to me thick and distorted, even under the midday sun. At a small grocery store, an elderly cashier noticed my hand. Her eyes widened. "You shouldn't wear that," she said softly. I asked her why. She shook her head, ringing up my items with trembling fingers. "Because some things don't belong to one person, they belong to the dead." When I left, I felt watched again. Not from behind, from inside. That night, the temperature dropped suddenly. My breath fogged the air as I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the ring. I tried soap, oil, ice water. Nothing worked. The ring refused to budge, as if my finger had grown around it. As midnight approached,
the room filled with the smell of old cloth and soil. Then, the bed dipped, slowly, like someone sitting down beside me. I didn't look. I knew better. The weight shifted, fabric brushing softly against my arm. The pressure on my finger tightened sharply, sending pain shooting up my hand. "You're wearing it now," a voice whispered. Not outside my ear, inside my head. Images flooded my thoughts. A funeral procession under gray skies, hands lowering a coffin, a silver ring slipping onto cold skin. I gasped, and the weight lifted. The room snapped back to silence. In American folklore, possession isn't always violent. Sometimes it's administrative, paperwork done across lifetimes, ownership transferred quietly. When I checked my mirror, I barely recognized myself. Dark circles under my eyes, skin pale, and behind me, faint but unmistakable, stood the outline of a woman's reflection. Not solid, waiting. That night I dreamed of walking down a long road with no end. My shadow walked ahead of me, turning occasionally to make sure I followed, and beside it walked the old woman, her dress brushing the ground, her hand outstretched toward mine. When I woke screaming, the ring was tighter than ever, and carved into the inside of my finger were symbols matching the ones engraved on the band. That was when I understood something terrifying. The ring wasn't just attached to me, it was claiming me, and whatever waited in the shadows was running out of patience. By the sixth night, sleep came only in fragments. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched, measured, as if something was deciding how much longer I was useful. That's when I remembered the church. Every town like Black Hollow has one, an old structure people pass every day without really seeing. This one sat at the edge of the forest, its wooden walls darkened by age and rain. No lights, no sign of recent maintenance. Yet the door was open. Locals say churches are safe places. In European tradition, consecrated ground repels wandering spirits. In rural America, people believe churches stay open because something might need sanctuary at any hour. I wasn't sure which belief was worse. Inside, the air was cold and damp. The smell of old wood, candle wax, and mildew clung to my lungs. Rows of pews stretched toward the altar where candles burned despite no one being there. I wasn't alone. An elderly woman sat near the front, hands folded, back perfectly straight. Not her. This woman was alive. At least, I hoped she was. She wore a dark shawl and turned slowly when she heard my footsteps. "You're late," she said. I didn't know I was expected. She nodded toward my hand. "The ring knows time better than you." My stomach tightened. She told me she was the caretaker, that her family had watched over the church for generations. When I showed her the ring, she didn't flinch. Instead, she whispered a prayer under her breath. "That was buried," she said. "It was never meant to leave the ground." She led me beneath the church into a small stone room lit by a single bulb. Symbols covered the walls, some Christian, others far older. Wards mixed with warnings, European sigils of binding blended with early American folk magic. This town was built where paths cross, not roads, paths. She told me the truth locals refused to share. The ring belonged to a widow who refused to be forgotten. When she died, her grief tethered her spirit to this place. The ring was placed on her hand to guide her away, but it worked too well. She followed it. Anyone who wore the ring became visible to her, a beacon, a replacement. "Can it be removed?" I asked. The caretaker hesitated. "Yes," she said finally, "but not without cost. The ritual had to be done at the cemetery before dawn. The ring would resist, the spirit would object." "And if it fails?" I asked.
She met my eyes for the first time. "Then she won't need the ring anymore," she said. As we spoke, the candles flickered violently. The temperature dropped. The caretaker's voice shook. "She knows you're here." The church door slammed shut upstairs. From above us came the sound of slow footsteps, bare feet against old wood. The caretaker grabbed my arm. "Go," she hissed. "She doesn't like witnesses." As I ran from the church, the bell began to ring on its own, not in warning, but in invitation. Behind me, I heard fabric dragging across the floor, and closer still, my own footsteps. Only, I wasn't running anymore. Something else was matching my pace perfectly, and it knew where I was going next. The cemetery sat on a hill overlooking Black Hollow, hidden behind a line of twisted oak trees. Locals avoided it after sunset, not out of respect, but fear. This wasn't a place for remembrance, it was a place for containment. I arrived just before dawn. Fog clung low to the ground, thick and unmoving, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The caretaker's instructions echoed in my mind. "Do not look behind you. Do not speak her name. And whatever happens, do not let go of the ring." Gravestones leaned at unnatural angles, many too old to read. Some were scratched over, names deliberately erased. In early American burial traditions, removing a name was believed to weaken a spirit's identity. The ring burned against my skin. At the far end of the cemetery stood a single grave marked only by a symbol, the same symbol carved into the ring. I knew this was her. As I stepped closer, my shadow detached itself from my feet. It stretched forward, growing taller, wider, until it stood upright beside the grave. Its shape shifted, limbs forming slowly, like a body remembered rather than created. Then the humming started. Soft, familiar, the same funeral hymn she'd followed me with for nights. The fog thickened, swirling inward toward the grave. The temperature dropped so fast my hands shook violently. I knelt and pressed my palm against the stone, reciting the words the caretaker had given me, half prayer, half command. The ground beneath the grave trembled. From the fog, she emerged. The old woman stepped forward, her form more solid than ever before. Her dress was stained dark at the hem, soaked with earth. Her face, once distant and hollow, was now painfully clear. Wrinkled skin stretched tight, eyes black and wet, fixed entirely on the ring. "You're standing where I was left," she whispered. Her voice came from everywhere at once. The shadow beside me bent toward her, responding like a loyal animal. I realized then that it was no longer just following me, it was choosing. The ring tightened violently, pain exploding through my hand. I screamed, dropping to my knees. Symbols flared along the band, glowing faintly beneath my skin. "She promised I wouldn't wander," the woman said, stepping closer. "She lied." I held my hand over the grave, forcing the ring downward as instructed. The moment it touched the stone, the cemetery erupted in sound, whispers, crying, voices overlapping in languages I didn't understand. European folk magic warns that disturbed spirits call others like them. I felt hands brushing my legs, cold fingers tugging at my coat. Shapes moved beneath the fog, just below the surface of the earth. The woman screamed, not in rage, but in grief. The shadow tore itself from me and wrapped around her, merging with her form. For a moment, she looked almost alive again, whole, standing tall. Then she reached for me. I pulled the ring free. The pain vanished instantly. The woman collapsed into dust, her scream cut short as the fog rushed inward, swallowing everything. The shadow snapped back to my feet, shrinking unnaturally fast. Silence fell. When the sun finally rose, the cemetery looked ordinary, empty, harmless. The grave was gone. The ring lay in the dirt, dull and lifeless. I left it there, or
At least, I thought I did. As I walked away, my hand throbbed faintly, and when I looked down, there was a pale indentation on my finger, perfectly shaped like a ring, and behind me, in the long morning shadows, something stood up and began to follow.
I expected relief. That's what stories promise. Remove the object, end the curse. But folklore doesn't work like that. I left Black Hollow as the sun climbed higher, convinced the ritual had worked. The roads looked normal again. The fog thinned. My shadow behaved, stretching and shrinking exactly as it should. For a few hours, I almost believed I was free. Then the headaches started. A dull pressure behind my eyes, like something knocking from the inside. Every time I stopped the car, the silence felt too complete. No birds, no wind, no distant traffic. Just stillness, the kind that waits. At a highway rest stop, I went to wash my face. The mirror lagged behind my movements. Not much, just enough to notice. When I leaned closer, the reflection smiled. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the mirror snapped back to normal. But the air in the bathroom felt wrong, thick, sour with the smell of old soil. In European superstition, removing a cursed object doesn't banish the spirit. It simply removes the leash. By nightfall, I felt it again, the sensation of being followed. Not behind me, beside me. My shadow grew darker, heavier, no matter how bright the streetlights were. When I crossed the road, it crossed first. When I stopped, it leaned forward impatiently, as if urging me to keep moving. At the motel, the clerk stared at the floor the entire time. He slid the key across the counter without speaking. "You shouldn't have come in alone," he finally muttered. In my room, I locked the door and sat on the bed, staring at my hand. The indentation from the ring remained, faint but visible. When I pressed it, the skin felt numb. Then I heard breathing, soft, slow, right next to my ear. I didn't turn. A voice, her voice, slid into my thoughts. "You left me unfinished." The lights went out. In the darkness, something moved. The sound of fabric dragging across the floor. The scent of rot and dust filled the room. My shadow peeled itself off the wall and rose, stretching upward until it nearly touched the ceiling. Within it, I saw her face. Not whole, not solid, but forming. "You left me unfinished," she whispered. "I don't need the ring anymore. I need a place." The shadow lunged. I ran. Out of the room, down the stairs, into the night. The air outside burned my lungs, but I didn't stop. Wherever the streetlights failed, she followed, her outline flickering just beyond my vision. In American ghost lore, spirits attach to trauma, not objects. Once marked, a person becomes the anchor. I understood then. The ritual hadn't freed me. It had introduced me. Back in my car, I locked the doors and watched the darkness through the windshield. My shadow sat in the passenger seat. When I turned my head, it turned too slowly, and in the glass reflection, the old woman was no longer smiling. She was waiting. By the 9th night, I knew the truth no one ever admits. Curses don't end. They change hands. I drove without direction, headlights cutting through endless stretches of road. Every town blurred into the next, but the feeling remained. Like a weight pressing against my chest, reminding me I was no longer alone inside my own body. She spoke to me now without hesitation, not as whispers, as conversation. "You can't outrun memory," she said calmly, her voice echoing inside my skull. "You wear me better than the others." I pressed my hands against my ears, but the pressure only made the headaches worse. My shadow stretched across the dashboard, long and crooked, its shape flickering with each passing streetlight. At a small roadside bar somewhere near the state line, I finally stopped. Inside, the air smelled of beer and old wood. A few locals glanced at me, then quickly looked away. One man, older than the rest, didn't. He studied my face carefully. "You've got the look," he said. I asked him what he meant. "The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep," he replied. "The kind that comes from carrying something." He told me the part of the story the caretaker hadn't. The ring wasn't a prison, it was a warning. Every generation, someone is chosen to carry what the town refuses to face. When that person dies or breaks, the curse moves on. The object is just the invitation. The real bond is formed through fear, guilt, and acknowledgement. "The she's not attached to the ring," the man said. "She's attached to being remembered." That was the price. To end it, someone must take responsibility, become the anchor willingly, stay in one place, let the spirit fade with time, or pass it on. The old woman laughed softly in my head. "You could stop this," she said, "but you won't." Outside, my shadow waited by the door. I realized then that every story I'd heard about haunted towns had something in common. Someone always left, and someone else always stayed. At dawn, I returned to Black Hollow, not to fight, to finish it. I stood at the edge of town, watching the road stretch outward. Anyone passing through would slow here, anyone tired, anyone curious. The ring lay in my pocket. I don't remember picking it up from the cemetery. It was warm now. A car pulled in behind me. A young traveler stepped out, rubbing his eyes. Alone. The shadow behind him hadn't settled yet. "You dropped this," I said, holding out the ring. He hesitated. I smiled. The old woman's hand rested over mine, and for the first time since this began, the weight lifted from my chest. Some stories end with salvation, others end with understanding, and some are only ever meant to be continued.
The transfer wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no screaming, no sudden darkness swallowing the road. That's the lie horror stories tell, that evil announces itself. In reality, it leaves quietly. The young traveler thanked me, slid the ring onto his finger, and walked back to his car. He didn't notice the way the air shifted, didn't see how his shadow hesitated before following him. But I did. The moment the ring touched his skin, the pressure in my chest dissolved. The headaches vanished, as if a door inside my mind had finally been closed. I inhaled deeply for the first time in days. Behind me, the old woman stood still. She looked smaller, less defined. Her dress no longer dragged across the ground. Her face blurred at the edges, like a memory being forgotten. When she spoke, her voice sounded distant, strained. "You always choose this part," she said. Not angry, not sad, just tired. The traveler drove away. His headlights disappeared down the road, and with them went something I had carried longer than I realized. The shadow at my feet snapped back into place, perfectly ordinary, perfectly obedient. When I lifted my hand, it followed without delay. I waited for relief to turn into guilt. It didn't. In Black Hollow, dawn came slowly. The town emerged as if nothing had happened. Shops opening, birds returning, people stepping outside again. No one asked where I'd been. No one ever does. Before leaving, I visited the cemetery one last time. The grave was back, plain, unmarked, as if it had always been there. I understood then that Black Hollow doesn't end curses, it manages them. The caretaker's church was locked now, the bells silent. Whatever protection had been needed wasn't anymore. I left town before sunset. Weeks passed, then months. The world went on. News cycles changed, seasons turned. I stopped checking reflections, stopped listening for footsteps. Almost. Sometimes late at night, I still feel it.
a faint tug behind my eyes. Not possession, not fear. Memory. In European folklore, they say spirits don't haunt places, they haunt decisions. I don't know what happened to the traveler. I don't look for stories online, I don't watch the news from small towns, and I never stop at abandoned gas stations. But every now and then, when the light hits just right, my shadow lingers. Not enough to frighten me, just enough to remind me. If someone ever offers you a ring and tells you that you're already being followed, they're not threatening you. They're asking if you're willing to carry it. Because the worst curses don't trap you. They convince you that letting go is someone else's responsibility. And somewhere tonight, someone just put on a ring they should never have touched. Even now, I can't call it over. I left Black Hollow, drove miles away, and convinced myself I was free. The ring is gone from my hand, the shadow seems ordinary again, and the town looks harmless from a distance. But freedom isn't what horror stories promise. Freedom is subtle. It whispers in mirrors. It lingers in corners of empty rooms. It waits for the right moment to remind you that some things never truly leave. I learned that night, curses aren't about objects. They're about choices, about acknowledging what others refuse to see, and about understanding that every decision has a cost. The young traveler I passed the ring to, I don't know what became of him. Perhaps he's learning what I already did, that the moment you accept something unnatural, the world around you changes. Not violently, not immediately, but slowly, until you feel it in every shadow, every reflection, every quiet footstep behind you. Black Hollow still exists. The church, the cemetery, the abandoned gas station, they all wait quietly, carrying their centuries-old burdens. Locals whisper warnings, but outsiders ignore them. Some curses, after all, rely on ignorance to survive. So here's the thing. If you ever find a strange ring in a place you didn't expect, or feel that unnerving sensation of being watched when you're alone, listen to it. Don't laugh it off, don't rationalize, and definitely don't ignore it. Because some things aren't just stories. Some things are waiting for someone willing to see them, to feel them, and perhaps to carry them forward. I survived, for now, but I know one truth above all. The world is full of shadows pretending to be harmless, and sometimes a simple choice, a ring, a glance, a step, can invite them in. So, next time you hear a story about Black Hollow or see a figure in the corner of your eye that doesn't belong, remember this. It might not be over. It might just be starting for someone else. Stay aware, stay cautious, and if you want to hear more stories that will haunt your dreams in the best way possible, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know what might be watching while you sleep.